I decided to start creating art at the age of 18. Before then, I hardly ever drew or painted, except as a very small child. And then usually it was a kind of communal affair where me and my two brothers and two sisters would sit together and color in or paint or draw. And being the second youngest, my efforts always looked rather dismal, and I thought that I didn't have any artistic skills. Always when talking about art, people talked about it as if it was a specific talent. It was something that you either had or you didn't have. And so I kind of assumed that this was something I didn't have and I didn't try at all. I never got any encouragement towards art, even though my father had been an artist until I think it was the age of 28 when he got married, and then after that he had to basically become an art lover and feed his 5 children. At school they used to give us a diary every year, and at some point in my final year of school I was sitting next to a friend, Conrad, and we used to steal each other's diaries and write absurd, witty little comments and make silly cartoon-like drawings in each other's books. And then you'd just go home and you'd open your book and you'd see all this ridiculous stuff. And it was quite a big laugh. I found this extremely satisfying, to be on a level that I've never experienced before. And very soon after that I realized that I was finishing school, and in fact I didn't know what to do with my life at all. I had no real clear idea of what I wanted to do. I had moved from, as a young child, wanting to be a doctor, a brain surgeon, to then there was the fashion with Jacques Cousteau wanting to become a marine biologist, and then I thought, no, maybe psychologist. But in the end, I didn't really want to do anything. None of this really seemed satisfying. And then I got really ill. I got a glandular fever for a week or two. And during this glandular fever, I had an extremely high temperature. And I had the strangest visions, like in this murky, feverish state. By the time the fever broke, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And although I couldn't draw or paint or anything like that, I knew I wanted to become an artist. Our house was filled with great examples of modern art, especially with modern South African art. My father had become an art collector, and our house had really wonderful examples of paintings and silkscreen prints and drawings. And he had a huge library with art books. And I remember as a child going through these art books, but mainly to see the naked people. Well, art ran in my family. My great-grandfather had run away and joined the circus in Europe. My grandfather, who I think had 2 or 3 years of schooling, eventually ended up tuning pianos, playing classical music and painting and he was what was called a Sunday painter. They went out on a Sunday with the easels, and he made horrible paintings, but he enjoyed it a lot. My dad was a very accomplished draftsman, and I think he actually attended 1 or 2 years at arts in the Johannesburg Art School. My mother was very much into literature and reading. My uncle is a sculptor and has an art school in New Zealand. And my grandmother, she learned to spin and weave, and she taught the whole of South Africa how to spin and weave in this old kind of way with a real wooden spinning wheel. And now I went back to these art books, and this time I was interested in modern art. And because I couldn't draw and paint, what really interested me was conceptual art, and the art of, for instance, Jackson Pollock. It's kind of action painting, because that I could do, that I thought I could do. So I looked at the Jackson Pollock stuff, and Yves Klein, all kinds of, and performance art that seemed very interesting. At that same time, I became friends with a friend of mine's older brother, MC Botha, who had also just decided that he was going to become a writer. And then he moved into the house of one of South Africa's probably best artists, painters ever, Walter Bathys. I went one night and met Walter Bathys, and he said absolutely, if I want to paint, I should paint. So that was a great encouragement. And there was an exhibition of 100 Wasser's graphics in the Pretoria Art Museum. And again, his work does not really focus on dexterity, on the ability to draw, but rather on his use of color and imagination. I also discovered a South African poet called Wapko Jensma, who was living in exile. He had a book called Where White is the Color and Black is the Number, and he had the most wonderful poetry and graphics. So all of this kind of came together, and then since that day after I kind of recovered from this fever, I have just been drawing, painting and creating artworks and having lots of fun and working very hard. Of course, learning to draw was an extremely difficult process. When I entered art school, there was no kind of screening, and my drawings were absolutely horrific. But by the end of the year, of the third year, my drawing teacher, who'd actually kicked me out of the class that year and said he told me to go and look for another drawing teacher because he can't cope with me. And I had found somebody one of the lecturers that I liked, and she said, well, just bring me your work every couple of months, which I did. And in the end, the drawing teacher came to me and said, well, actually you had gotten the highest marks in drawing, which was quite a relief. But still, drawing is one of those things that you can never say you can draw. You always learn to draw and see more.